Hey guys, welcome to the fight night Moreno versus Kavanagh full card breakdown. YouTube is being finicky as usual, so while I'm pretty sure this is live, I am not 100% sure, so make sure to confirm you can hear me if you can. We're good? Okay, nice. Okay, so this might be a little bit of a faster stream than usual because I'm unfortunately sick again, so I do want to get through it on the faster side and then probably try to sleep a little more than I normally do. But I appreciate you guys coming here early. We will get relatively quickly into the results breakdown from last card, and then I'll get into questions for a few minutes, and then we'll start on this card. So, starting with Carly Giudice versus Juliana Miller. This was honestly, even though like on paper it was a dominant performance from Giudice, I thought this was a really disappointing performance. Like, if you can't finish Miller, that is a problem. Miller is one of the most finishable, if not the most finishable fighters in the UFC. So, Giudice is like technically okay, but very questionable decision making, and she definitely has pillow hands, which to be fair, we have seen because she's only been able to get finishes with kicks. But so that is what it is, but I did not think it was a good performance to say the least. We had a good ending last card, yeah, for sure. Last card, I mean, betting wise was great for us last card. Especially the last several fights. But yeah, the beginning was definitely not the most entertaining, to say the least. Getting into Jordan Levitt versus Yadier Delvay. So I was definitely right about this fight being more suspicious than people were making it out to be. I hope you guys did not bet on Delvay, because this was one of these fights where I was like, everyone's going to bet on him, and it's not a lock by any means. Levitt looked good at 145. His wrestling is a lot easier now that he's not like extremely undersized for the division. His cardio looks better, so maybe he's just doing more cardio now. And yeah, I mean, he did what he needed to do. Delvay didn't really have anything off of his back. He didn't have the ability to get back to the feet, and he didn't really know how to deal with Levitt's movement on the feet. He did have a few good strikes landed, but Delvay really needs to dial in his game plans because that was not good for him, to say the least. Strickland saved us, valid, yeah. All right, moving on to Gianpaolo Bosniani versus Phil Rowe. So a lot of people were asking my opinions on it, and I get why. First of all, I don't think that was a split decision, right? I had JPL winning 30-27. You could definitely give Phil Rowe round 3, right? I'm not going to argue with you if you think that him rocking JPL at the end of round 3 was enough to give it to him. I think the 2 submission attempts overrode it, but it was a very close round. Rounds 1 and 2, I did not think were particularly close. Now, the problem JPL had in this fight is that when you are going to go for the finish very actively, you're definitely putting yourself in a bit more danger. And Phil Rowe, in fairness to him, definitely can create danger if you give him the opportunity to. So with, what's his name? Seokyeon Ko, he just didn't take any risks, right? He kind of just held Phil Rowe down most of the fight and didn't try anything. And if you have that game plan, yes, you can look pretty good against Phil Rowe. JPL jumping for subs, trying to get the knockout on the feet, stuff like that. He is not going to look as good if he's not able to get the finish. But skill for skill, I thought he looked pretty good. Does he have a little bit of polishing to do? 100%, but I think he'll get there. I'm still extremely high on him. The split is so bad. Yeah, exactly. It was a very strange split. Soriano versus Brahimaj was a little bit of a strange fight because I actually thought the wrestling success would come only from Soriano. Brahimaj got more takedowns than I expected, but he just got reversed like right when he got the takedowns or just couldn't do anything with it whatsoever. Brahimaj was doing very well in the feet in round 1. And then in round 2 and 3, just, I don't know if he was gassing or what the deal is. I kind of was paying half attention to this fight with how boring it was, to be honest. But Soriano looked good. He played it safe, right? He knew to drill the guillotine defense. Brahimaj just had nothing past round 1, it felt like, so that is what it is. Edwards versus Cornol. So I will say, Edwards looked completely lost in round 1. It seemed like she thought that the grappling was going to come easy to her, and it very much didn't. In round 2, she started using her hands a bit more, and that helped set up the grappling. But I don't know if it was just a game planning issue, or she was just really worried about Cornol striking, or what the deal is, but even though Edwards technically got a finish win here, I don't feel like she looked very good. So that is what it is, but she did get the finish, and that's 3 finishes in a row, which is obviously not the most common at women's bantamweight. So she will keep getting pushed, and we'll see what happens when she gets a shot upwards. Coria versus Gurul. Coria is another one of these fighters where it's like, okay, on paper, that was a good performance. I think probably a 30-27. But watching it, it was kind of like, I want to see a little bit more against Louis Gurul, like knock him out, do something. Like Louis Gurul's not, and I'm sure no disrespect for him, but I don't think he's a UFC level fighter in all honesty. So I would have liked to see Coria push for the finish a bit more there. Coria also, his defense in the pocket just stays abysmal. Against these not as dangerous and lower level flyweights, it'll be okay. But you fight like an Ode Osborne, right? I'm going to be worried for Coria here if he gets a matchup like that, because he's just so shinnable in the pocket right now. So he needs to really work on that, and I mean, hopefully for his sake, he makes leaps there, otherwise he's going to get knocked out. Chairez versus Osborne was the most Ode fight of all time. It's like, okay, he has some moments on the feet, but just can't do enough, and then gets taken down. And that's pretty much it. Chairez looked good on the striking in a lot of round 1, to be fair. So I don't think it was like just the wrestling that did it by any means. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of just rounds 2 and 3. Ode couldn't stuff a takedown. Chairez got it. So yeah, in terms of predictions, I should probably be counting this up. We got everything right except for I technically picked Del Valle, even though I said Levitt was a live underdog, and we actually bet on Levitt in the betting service. So all bets were pretty much right. Sorry, except for Judice TKO. I thought she would definitely get the finish. Only pick wrong, Del Valle. Then we go on to Leal versus Njokuani. This is an interesting fight because, first of all, I'm surprised Njokuani was higher significant strikes. I know that he was throwing out a lot of kicks. Leal threw like some 30 punch combinations, though. I am surprised that Leal couldn't get the finish because Njokuani's historically not the most durable guy in the sport, to say the least. And Leal was hitting him a fair amount. The volume Leal can keep up for 3 rounds is pretty insane, but I am starting to realize that Leal just does not have much power in his hands. He got the finish against Moreno, but it took a very long combination, and it honestly seemed like the bodywork is what got to Moreno. He couldn't even really knock him out like to the head. So Leal's defense is always questionable, but he does move enough, and he has a good enough of a chin that he makes it work. I'm honestly not too high on either of their futures in the sport, but it was a very entertaining fight, so I appreciate that. Michel Pereira versus Zach Reese. Okay, so a lot of people are saying it was a robbery. Despite having picked and bet Zach Reese, I actually don't think it was a robbery. I gave Michel Pereira rounds 1 and 3. The only problem for the scorecards is that the judges gave Pereira round 2, not round 3. So that definitely makes it a bad scorecard. So I wouldn't say a robbery, but it was definitely a mistake anyways. In terms of how they looked, both of them looked terrible. I mean, Reese was loading up on the weirdest hooks of all time. Pereira just gasses out within 2 minutes of a fight starting. This was one of these fights where it's like you could cut both of these guys from the UFC and we'd probably be better off for it. So I just don't know. I had high hopes for Zach Reese at one point, but he just has not followed through. And it's honestly kind of making the Perez fight look kind of like a fluke because is it Perez? I'm blanking on his name. Marquez, not Perez, rather. Yes, Julian Marquez. It's kind of making it look like a fluke because even though he technically put him out with the clean combo, it's like, okay, you haven't been able to do that to any opponent since then. Like, what is this? Like, even the Jackson-McVeigh fight, and even though McVeigh I do think is a little underrated right now, his striking defense is not spectacular, and you couldn't catch him even. So, I don't know. Just neither of them looked very good. Jacoby Smith versus Josiah Harrell went pretty much exactly how I expected it to. Harrell is just not that level. Maybe he can get a win or two in the UFC. I don't think he sucks by any means, but he was just not going to have any chance in this fight. He just doesn't have any defense anywhere, and especially on the feet. And then for some reason, he forces wrestling where he doesn't have any wrestling. Like, he'll shoot takedowns, and all it does is mildly annoy his opponent. So I feel bad for him because obviously his circumstances and such, but I don't even know what they can do for him because I feel like if they give him anyone else decent, he's just going to get knocked out again. So hopefully for his sake, he improves. It is what it is, I guess. Smith looked good. They do have to give him a step up. I do think Hollins, regardless of if he wins or loses, is probably a good fight to make, and I would pick Jacoby. I think it may be a boring decision in all honesty, because Hollins may just accept guard the entire fight, and it's kind of hard to generate too much ground and pound from guard unless you have like Arman Saryukian's like dimensions. So I'm not confident Smith gets a finish there, but it's probably the fight to make anyways. Spivak versus Ante Delia was not the fight I expected, but it was entertaining. Spivak had the best striking we've ever seen him have. And yeah, I mean, his wrestle, he barely even wrestled. Like, I guess he wrestled a little bit in, what was it, round 3, I think? Maybe round 2 after he got rocked badly. I do think he needs to blend the wrestling in more, because he probably could have finished Ante Delia if he was blending it properly. But Spivak is a very good fighter, and he does keep improving. Unlike a lot of these heavyweights who kind of just show up for the paycheck and don't really make any strides fight to fight, like, you can see the effort Spivak is putting in. His jab has evolved significantly in the last 3 to 4 fights. Delia is just probably gone. Could he beat a few people in the UFC? 100%. But he's on the older side. He's probably like getting paid a fair amount as well. So I just don't think he's worth it for the UFC to have. He has fast hands. He's always going to be dangerous, especially for any slow starters, but he's not a very good fighter all in all. Spivak also beat Cortez Acosta. Yeah, I thought so as well. Spivak looks surprisingly really good against Delia, and honestly evolved. Yeah, exactly. A vision of Spivak could have broken Almeida, in my opinion. Maybe. I think the problem against Almeida is he got so hyper-fixated on the wrestling that he just ignored his striking defense at all and got caught. Obviously, if he fights the Almeida that we saw last time, he'd probably beat him. I don't know what that was, but yeah, I don't know. Almeida is such an enigma. Moki Costa versus Ige was a pleasant surprise. We did bet Costa by TKO in the betting service, but I didn't think that there was that high a chance of it hitting. I thought it was probably like a 25% chance. Costa just knew he was going to get Ige out of there. He was throwing to kill Ige. That was his intention with everything he threw. His grappling defense looked spectacular. His range management looked spectacular. His defense on the feet has evolved a lot, so even if you get into the pocket now, he knows how to move. So it's definitely an improvement from when he got ginned by Garcia, to say the least. And Ige just didn't have anything for him, realistically. As soon as Ige was forced to stand with him for a meaningful period of time, he just was taking unanswered shots and then got put out. People are saying, like, early stoppage. I don't think so. I think, based on Ige's reaction, that could have broken his orbital. So, especially when that happens, you have to stop the fight quickly and, like, hope that the fighter doesn't have to get a plate put in afterwards, because it's definitely a possibility if his orbital broke. But moving on to Medic versus Neal. Only fight that really surprised me on the card. As you guys know well, I have a very low opinion of Uros Medic, but Neal might just be done, because I rewatched the fight because I genuinely am still kind of shocked at the outcome, and Neal got rocked by pretty much nothing. Like, I know Medic hits hard, to say the least, but like 50-year-old like Tim Means was taking shots better than Jeff Neal did, and I don't think Medic's power improved like significantly within the last few fights. So Neal may actually be washed, and I did not think that was going to be the narrative, but it seems like it is. He just didn't really have anything, and he just got rocked by air pretty much. So Neal, he's either gonna have to retire or fight someone much lower and hope he can defend his rank. Or he's not ranked anymore, right? But I guess defend his edge of the ranking gatekeeper spot. And Medic, yeah, I do think you give him Leon Edwards. And the crazy thing is, even though Leon is a technically better fighter than Medic for sure, Medic's style is very bad for Leon, so I would not be surprised if Medic did shin Leon, which is crazy because I don't rate Medic as like a top 30, top 40 fighter, but he could be in the top like 7 or so with the correct matchups at this point. That honestly was Neal's fight to win, but he looked really bad, and it sucks how washed he got in a couple of fights. Yeah, for sure. Alright, then the main event, Strickland versus Hernandez. Honestly, Strickland looked even better than I expected, and I picked Strickland by TKO. I thought that Strickland was going to get taken down a few times and then just have to get up, but he was circling properly on the back foot to the point that Hernandez could not set up a single takedown properly. A lot of people have been like, oh, why did Hernandez not wrestle more? It's because he couldn't. Hernandez does not have spectacular shots. He relies on volume of shots, and to create that volume of shots, you need to stand in front of him so he can just lean down and basically try to half-heartedly shoot and then go from there. The circling on the back foot completely kills that, and Strickland, of course, popping the jab in the face made it so that Hernandez wasn't able to really pressure forwards even if he was on the front foot. So yeah, it was a even worse matchup for Hernandez than I expected, and pretty one-sided performance overall. I would always like to see Strickland throw the cross more. I feel like he actually could have finished this fight earlier because of how well he was doing, but yeah, I mean, he got it done, and especially with the fact that it seems like he is listening to the coaches more now, maybe he has a shot against Chimaev. I still wouldn't pick him, but like there's definitely a feasibility of which he's hard enough to take down, and he can scramble enough times when he's on the ground to gas out Chimaev. It is the more difficult game plan to implement for sure, so unless something changes, I can't pick him. But it is probably a more interesting fight than, say, Imavov at this point, even though I do feel like Imavov deserves it, should get the shot. I do definitely give Strickland a higher chance than Imavov to beat Chimaev. Fluffy's whole game got shut down, which is crazy because you would think Fluffy's style would shut down Strickland, but the opposite happened. I mean, Fluffy never had a good style to fight Strickland, in all honesty, because Fluffy relies on pressure that is just very difficult to create against Strickland unless you have one-shot knockout power. DDP was only able to push Strickland backwards continuously because he was bombing overhands that would have chinned Strickland if they landed clean ones. So yeah, when you fight like that, you can push Strickland backwards. But if you don't have that much power like Hernandez, it's just not going to happen. What's the state of the octagon? So for this card, I mean, it was spectacular, right? We got like one wrong, second wrong here. I feel like I got one more wrong. What was it? Oh, yeah, this one. We got 3 wrong, I guess, right? And betting-wise, it was one of the best we've had in quite a while. I think some people were up like 75 plus units. So if you guys are not in the betting service yet, very, very much do consider doing so because we made a ridiculous amount of money from this night. The link is in the description for that. It's only $25 a month and people are making, in some cases, thousands a week. But anyways, I will answer questions for a few minutes and then we'll get into the breakdown for this week. Just going through what you guys were saying. Power and athleticism can get you far in MMA. Yeah, in some cases they definitely can. But it's just so weird. He can beat top 10 guys, but also lose to guys outside the top 50. Yeah, I agree. It's weird. Garcia versus Costa rematch would be fun, but I don't know if it'd be any different. Yeah, Garcia's gotten better as well, so I would still pick Garcia, but it would be interesting to see again. Lucrative James lost 100,000 betting on Delvai. If that's true, that's wild. I don't know what made people so confident in Delvai. I was looking at the odds and I was like, this is actually insane. Levitt's not a fan, and Delvai isn't that good. Do you think Hockett will beat Blades? I'll do tape on them, but Hockett's striking defense is still so bad, I'm probably picking Blades. Is there any fighter performance where you legitimately thought at the time they were throwing the fight? There's probably been a few, but I can't think of them offhand, to be honest. I think Medic could sleep Buckley just stylistically. It's possible. He lost 300,000 total. That's wild. How does someone lose 300,000 in a night betting? That's actually crazy. I mean, I guess if you have a stupid amount of money, but I don't know. That's still crazy to me. DDP or Imavov and Block Brady or Buckley. I'd lean DDP against Imavov very barely. I do think Imavov's a bad matchup for him, though. Brady or Buckley, I still think is like a 50-50. Big Delvai and Ante and viewed them both as 50s. I don't know why anyone would bet on the favorite at those odds, though. Yeah, I agree with you. That's like fair to lean them 50-50. Gaudier versus Ivo Aslan. Gaudier, because Ivo is just going to brawl. I think people were so high on Delvai just because he's undefeated. That's fair. I guess that definitely does skew the perception a bit. Delvai about to have put a hit on him. Oh god. Ailín Buckley for sure. I really hope he's a decent underdog there. Fair. Josiah was also undefeated. Yeah, that is true. We got Brady or Buckley. Yeah, I'm still very 50-50 on it. I'm going to have to do more tape on how Brady shoots exactly, because I don't think that Brady has the explosive shots that someone like an Usman does. So I think that Buckley's going to have an easier time getting out of the way, and on the feet, there's definitely a massive difference. But if Brady gets the fight down once, it could be over. So I'm going to have to look into that. Also, this fight just further proves the Bulgarian fight was fixed. To an extent, but I also think Bulgarian was much worse than people thought he was. So, like, was it fixed? Yeah, very possibly, but I also wouldn't be shocked if Bulgarian got subbed if it wasn't. Hardwick or his opponent. I forgot the name, but I honestly think Hardwick can get it. It's Rahiki, I think. I have to look back at Rahiki's tape. He got dropped multiple times on Contender Series, which wasn't the best look, but he is very dangerous also. Do you think Strickland will suffer the same fate as DDP against Hamzat? Not quite the same. I don't think that Strickland will get stuck in positions like that, but I do think he could get controlled most. The most amount of money that I've ever bet on a single fight is a Strickland fight, other than Jake Paul versus Talk that the entire chat put their money on Strickland. I mean, it made sense, so we did what worked out, to say the least. Strickland versus DDP3. It's winnable for both of them. I would still probably lean DDP, but I'd have to rewatch the tape. I think Bo Nichols is a sneaky hard matchup for Chimaev if he improves his striking. Honestly, Bo Nichols BJJ against RDR did not look good, so while I get the angle, I don't think so. Talking about it earlier, I still think of Whitaker's teeth didn't cave in that he would have beaten Chimaev. It's possible. I think Hamza would have a harder time holding down Sean because Sean constantly fight position, try to get up. Definitely affect Hamzat's gas tank, especially if he goes to later rounds. Yeah, exactly. It's definitely a harder matchup for Hamzat than DDP. But alright, we will get into the breakdown. I'm going to have to find my notes as well. Alright, so starting with Damian versus Wes Schultz. So Damian is a power puncher who basically just throws in combinations. He will, on the outside, he'll just basically throw calf kicks. Sometimes he does overextend on the calf kick, which can be a bit problematic because it leaves a pretty massive opening. Sometimes he will teep as well, but it is less common than the calf kick. His only real defense is the high guard. Otherwise, he's just going to face tank things. Like, he's not moving his head at all. He is not moving out of range. He is just blocking with a high guard. He will enter with combos using his entire power in every single punch. He's just looking for a quick knockout in every fight. Like, that is his entire strategy. Against takedowns, he's just going to grab an underhook or overhook and just try to be more athletic than his opponent. We don't really know his cardio in general. It hasn't been tested. His ground game is a little bit more tested than his cardio, but not against someone who's actually good. Wes is a very chaotic and pace-like related style in a sense. He's basically just trying to do stuff until you get overwhelmed. He'll throw a lot of unorthodox strikes from weird angles, and he'll pin it with a lot of spinning stuff together. Like, he threw 3 spinning strikes in the same combination in the Contender Series. I think the first Contender Series fight, which was weird to look at, to say the least. He does have a lot of power in his hands, in all fairness, but he doesn't set it up at all well. He just kind of hopes throwing it from weird angles will catch you. His defense is absolutely garbage. It is technically speaking movement-based, but like not in any educated manner. It's not like Yuri trying to move out of the way and counter. It's just like he's just moving somewhere. So he does get caught a lot because of it. He will kind of try to flow into takedowns and then hunt for subs on the ground. He has a variety of takedowns, but again, similar to his striking, the issue is that his takedowns just are not set up well. So even though he is technically speaking a skilled wrestler, he has a lot less success with the wrestling than you would expect from a wrestler of his credentials. I am going to pick Damian to win by TKO here because Wes's defense is just so abysmal. So if he doesn't shoot immediately, I see him getting caught here. There is a world for sure where if he gets a single takedown, the fight could be over because we haven't seen Damian tested against someone of Wes's caliber on the ground. And Wes definitely does have creative submissions and transitions to land ground and pound. So one of them is probably ending the fight very early, but I do think it will be Damian who wins by TKO. Moving on to Eric Silva versus... OBS just told me it is connected, so Restoration successful. Can you guys still hear me? I don't know what OBS is doing. We're back? All right, nice. So I will go back a few points because I don't know how much cut out. I don't know why OBS just randomly disconnected for me. All right, so, okay, we'll just restart this, right? So Silva is an aggressive grappler. He's not really focused on controlling you. He just wants to get finishes at pretty much all costs. He has a variety of takedowns, from double legs to sweep attempts in the clinch. He tends to seem to prefer looking for stuff in the clinch, but he'll enter on a double leg just to close the distance if he needs to. On the ground, he will either just land aggressive ground and pound or tend to chase the back and look for a choke from there. On the feet, he tends to lunge into everything he throws. So he'll throw like lunging calf kicks, or like long crosses, flying knees, etc. His defense everywhere just sucks. He just doesn't have defense. Marshall is effectively a wrestler who developed a solid stand-up game. On the outside, he'll move around a lot. He'll keep things clean by just jabbing constantly before he enters. When he does enter, he really likes to enter on the right hook. He keeps a high guard and moves his head defensively, so kind of a double layer defense there. His shots are mainly double legs from the outside, and kind of more so mainly like blast doubles. He will work around to the back if he can, otherwise he's fine just settling with top control and trying to land a little bit of ground and pound. His biggest issue has generally been his output. He just always ends up down on the numbers of strikes, even if he's like doing well in a fight. It's very strange to watch. So if he can open up a little bit more, he'll probably do a lot better. I'm going to pick Marshall to win by submission. Silva shouldn't stand much a chance here. Silva's only chance is landing a flying knee as Marshall enters. Silva's flying knees are decent, and Marshall can be a little bit weird with how he enters, so I wouldn't be like terribly shocked if that happens. But otherwise, this feels like a sacrificial like apology matchup so that Marshall can just get an easy win and probably a highlight. I think it might be a club and sub here where he drops Silva on the feet and then just goes around for the back and tries to find a rear naked choke there. So yeah, Marshall by submission. I'm going to say specifically a rear naked choke. All right, moving on to Sofia Montenegro versus Ernesta. I never know how to say her last name. We'll just call her Ernesta. So Montenegro is a very heavy-handed striker, which definitely not the typical type of style for WMMA to say the least. She keeps a boxing stance and she'll constantly move forward. She's just going to pressure at all times pretty much. She throws a lot of calf kicks and jabs on the outside. When she enters a lot with the 1-2. Sometimes the 2 is a little bit looping. It's not quite an overhand though. I'm still calling it a cross, but it's kind of a combination of the two. Once she's on the inside, she sometimes extends the combinations to include hooks after that, but mainly she is looking to land the 1-2. She does have wrestling. It is mainly double legs, but it's kind of just thrown in. She really likes striking, and she will strike basically the entire fight if she feels like she can get away with it. In the past, she was using a lot of feints. In the Contender Series fight, she did not. She ended up really just throwing everything without setup. I don't know if it was because she was looking for a highlight to get into the UFC, so we may see her have a more nuanced game come back here. She definitely can slow down, but it's mainly because of the fact that her power and output are very high. It's not like she just has generically bad cardio. She definitely does put herself in a bit of danger with how aggressively she enters, so she definitely is open to being countered and put out at some point in her career. Ernesta is also a boxer. Her nickname is heavy-handed, but she's more of a volume striker, so it doesn't really make sense in all honesty. She stands very hunched over, so she can't really react defensively much other than like keeping the high guard up. She's kind of like how Aimon Zahabi stands, except his high guard is actually like very educated, where hers is kind of just there. She has an incredibly long reach for the weight class, but does not use it at all. She kind of just enters into the pocket with combination. She will enter with a cross and then sometimes go to the body with hooks after that. She's good at using overhooks to stifle takedowns and work back to the feet if necessary. When I was looking at the odds here, I was very surprised that Ernesta is a sizable favorite, because she doesn't have much power. She's going to enter into the pocket and kill her reach advantage, and Montenegro hits a lot harder than her, and she's willing to look for the knockout. So I am going to just slightly lean towards Montenegro, and I'm going to pick her to win by TKO. Obviously, WMMA, I don't really know what's going to happen, but she's definitely going to be the more aggressive fighter here and the one who has the higher finishing chances, let's say. All right, moving on to Douglas Silva de Andrade versus Javier Reyes. So, Silva is an unorthodox striker who's going to keep a high pace when possible. When his opponents have a lot of power, that does kind of change a bit, but if he's able to keep throwing, he will. He throws a lot of spinning back kicks and wheel kicks, but he does it in a very efficient manner where he doesn't really project it at all. He's able to land it at a higher clip than most people are because it just comes out of absolutely nowhere. He enters into the pocket in a variety of ways. Sometimes it's with a 1-2, sometimes it's a lead hook, and so on. His defense is mainly fading backwards, but he does it relatively efficiently, so he's been able to maintain a high defense percentage. He's definitely open to calf kicks because he has a boxing stance and just does not react quickly to calf kicks themselves. Reyes is a very loose and kind of like flow state oriented fighter. He's technically well-rounded, but definitely prefers to strike. He will just back up to the fence voluntarily and let his opponent throw at him. Very strange. He keeps his hands low so that he can flow into stuff more easily, but because of that, his defense kind of sucks. He throws combinations when he does start to throw, and he'll kind of just like run forwards and just throw repetitively. They definitely can be dangerous and overwhelm lower level opponents in those exchanges. It's hard to pick a 40-year-old, but Reyes' defense is just so garbage, and he's only really been crushing cans. So I have to pick the better fighter here. I don't know if his durability is going to hold up, but I'm going to pick Silva to win by decision here. And it's a weird one, right? I could see this going in a lot of ways, but I just can't pick Reyes with how bad he is skill for skill. I even though he got a highlight on Contender Series, I still honestly feel like he shouldn't have been signed with what he displayed. It was a weird one. All right, moving on to Cristian Quinonez versus Chris Montenegro. So Quinonez is a karate stylist, and he's thrown a lot of like explosive takedowns into his game, but it's really a toss-up of when he decides to use it and when he doesn't. Like for some reason, he was offensively wrestling against Barcelos, but then just didn't offensively wrestle in his other fights, which is a weird choice, but is what it is. He will use his jab a lot at range and then kind of jump in with his cross. If he does shoot, it's mainly just shooting blast double legs and just trying to use his explosiveness to secure it quickly. Generally speaking, he just wants to set up a knockout. He's not really thinking about much else. He definitely can be reckless with how he enters into the pocket, and he doesn't really move well laterally, so he doesn't have the defense that most good karate stylists do. Say it's kind of easy to blitz him or set up takedowns as long as you can evade the first counter as you enter. His takedown defense has definitely evolved. He will grab overhooks or underhooks all right, but anyone who is very experienced will be able to work past it, generally speaking. Montenegro is a somewhat well-rounded volume boxer. He's going to try to pressure you and then throw combinations at you there. He does have grappling, technically speaking, but he's only really been able to implement it against lower-level competition, so I don't know what to say about that. His defensive reaction time is just not there. It's weird. Like, I feel bad for Montenegro because he seems like he is a hard worker, but he just has no talent for this. Like, he's not very durable. He just doesn't have defensive reaction time. He doesn't really have power in his hands. There's just not much there, and you can only improve so much on your baseline. So I do have to pick Quinonez to get a TKO here, but the fact that Quinonez is a minus 500 favorite against anyone is kind of ridiculous in my opinion. Not that I expect Kris to win here, but I just don't think betting on Quinonez at minus 500 is at all intelligent. Hopefully Kris doesn't get absolutely destroyed again because it's just, yeah, I don't know. I feel bad for the guy. We are Chris Montenegro, fair. I'm new to the betting system, what to actually look at for when I want to tail the bets. I'll get back to that either at the end or in the Discord itself. You can also always ask the guys there. They're very helpful. Should Quinonez be the biggest favorite on the card? I don't think so, in all honesty. Like, even though it's because Montenegro isn't great, it's like, are we going to pretend Quinonez is reliable? Quinonez minus 640 is insane. He hasn't fought in 2 years either. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't make sense. But moving on to Pérez versus Chiasson. So Pérez is a relatively calm and calculated grappler. She's going to fight intelligently pretty much at all times. She doesn't make any like overtly stupid decisions. On the feet, she stays on the outside and mainly throws high kicks and 1-2s. The high kicks help for her to set up the takedowns as she enters. She'll mix things up occasionally and go for like a dramatic overhand or spinning back fist. She is faster than she looked. I don't know what it is. Whenever I watch Perez, I for some reason expect her to be a very slow striker. She is not. She can actually throw very quickly. Wrestling-wise, she is extremely persistent. She'll just like shoot repetitively if she needs to. She likes to get throws in the clinch especially, but she also will enter on a traditional double leg if she needs to. On top, she'll either work towards mounts or the back and try to go for a finish from there, but she definitely can rush it and get reversed. That's been kind of her biggest issue in some of her fights. She can enter for takedowns a bit recklessly, so she has gotten caught with like knees and such when she does enter. And on the feet, she doesn't really know what to do if people throw combinations at her. So her defense isn't spectacular, but she has enough offense that it kind of makes up for it a lot of times. Macy is a Muay Thai striker who just kind of threw a lot of wrestling into her game. Her stand-up is like surprisingly similar to Zach Reese in a way. She has striking, but she'll just continue to throw like the wrong techniques for absolutely no reason. Like she'll throw body kicks when she's in the pocket. She'll throw like overhands when she should be throwing across. So it's very weird decision making, even though she has like the technique and power to be good if she made good decisions. Her grappling is mainly double legs, and on the ground she's either looking to control and slowly do damage, or just get to the back and find a rear naked choke. On the feet, she's just not defensively sound in general, and it seems like she's been struggling a lot to make 135 pounds, especially as she's gotten older. I am going to say that Perez wins by decision here. Macy is one of those fighters who it's like always nerve-wracking to pick against because she has the skills and the physicality, but she just never puts it together. So yeah, Perez should probably make this look fairly easily. All right. Last fight of the prelims, Ryan Gandra versus Medina. So starting with Gandra, he is actually a patient counter striker. So despite the fact that he's a power puncher, he waits a lot than people assume he will, like looking at his fight results. He'll wait for an opening and then just unload with like a combination of hooks. When he's on the outside, he's usually just waiting, but he will throw some deep kicks and some calf kicks so that he's technically doing something at times. When he enters, it's always with a flurry, and then he'll just reset if his opponent isn't hurt or looking like they're going to get knocked out. When he is in the pocket, he is very much open because he is just spamming hooks without like any real defense. But it's obviously intimidating to counter him because of the fact that he has so much power when he does throw. He definitely can get taken down, especially because of how like he only has one gear when he enters, let's put it that way. He definitely can get taken down when he enters because of that, but he is relatively good at getting back to his feet. Medina is a walking heavy bag, and he throws wild strikes, but despite throwing overhands, it somehow has zero power in them whatsoever. He will technically shoot takedowns, but it's hard to even call them takedowns because he's kind of just falling to his knees in front of his opponent and hoping that it works. He protects his hands extremely well by blocking strikes with his chin. It's a very good skill. He is extremely durable, and he has decent cardio, so he just keeps doing stuff as long as he can. What that stuff is a little bit questionable. I will say Gandra waits a lot. So there is a world here in which this goes longer than people expect it to. So I wouldn't like recommend loading up on Gandra by first round TKO or anything, because he could end up just waiting and throwing a few bursts, backing up because Medina's durable and not going out, and this fight goes longer than you think. But I am going to say Gandra wins by TKO. I just don't know when it will happen, and there is definitely a chance it does go to decision. All right, I will answer a few questions before we get into the main card. Can you review Ailín Perez's OnlyFans? I will not be doing that. We are Jose Daniel Medina. I would hope not. Not liking Gandra's physique, looks chubby. He's not really chubby, but I do get what you're saying. He looks a little bit better in the octagon because you could tell the muscles there, but I do definitely get what you're saying. I could genuinely see Medina winning somehow. Gandra fought someone who was somehow worse than Medina on Contender Series. I still don't think Medina has a chance to win, but I do understand what you're saying. I don't have the highest opinion of Gandra, but that being said, like, at least he knows how to throw a punch that can hurt someone, where Medina just doesn't have anything. Would you count on Gandra not getting it done by round 1.5? I wouldn't count on it either way. Like, that's not something I would put money on, in all honesty, personally at least, obviously. You guys will have to make your choices there. All right. Okay, moving on to Santiago Luna versus, is it Angel or Angel? I don't know. Let's just say Pacheco. So, Luna is a relatively high-credentialed wrestler who kind of just discovered that he has heavy hands and likes knocking people out, so continue to try to do so. He is very good at getting body lock-related takedowns and working from the clinch in general. He definitely can shoot double legs as well, but he tends to bring that out a little bit later in fights if he needs to. It's typically not his first go-to plan. On the ground, his BJJ hasn't quite caught up, so sometimes he does give up ground control, so his opponents are able to stand up fairly easy, especially if he looks to land anything, because he just doesn't really know what to do with his legs. On the feet, he typically uses a long jab from the outside, along with kicks, and then enters with overhands and hooks typically. He can be a little bit reckless inside the pocket. That, combined with not being the most durable, is a little bit of a concern, but if he lands, generally the fight is over because he does have surprising power. Pacheco is kind of just a pure volume striker at this point. Like, he technically used a lot of wrestling on the regional scene, but it seemed completely ineffective against UFC level competition. So he constantly pumps out jabs. When he does enter, it tends to be on a 1-2. Sometimes he extends the pockets with a few hooks to the body and such afterwards. He doesn't have good takedown defense, like, he just doesn't react well to it in general. He doesn't have great striking defense either. He just kind of absorbs a lot of strikes around his high guard. And he has no real finishing ability against a decent level of competition. So Pacheco is like one of these guys who people thought might be good because he looked really good on the regional scene. And then we kind of found out, like, no, his regional scene competition was just really, really bad. So I am going to pick Luna by TKO here. There is a world kind of almost similar to the Medina thing, where Pacheco is just more durable than expected and the fight goes very long. I wouldn't be shocked. But I do think Luna is the heaviest hitter that Pacheco will have faced and will be able to get the highlight that the UFC is trying to set him up for here. All right, moving on to Imanol Rodriguez versus Kevin Borjas. So Rodriguez is a pocket combination boxer, but he has become a lot more well-rounded than he was in the past. So he does have pretty much every skill set at this point. On the outside, he'll poke a little bit with kicks and like feint the wrestling sometimes, but he really wants to just enter in the pocket and throw a bunch of quick combinations there. If you make a mistake, he is going to jump into the pocket and counter heavy. His wrestling is in development. He has decent blast doubles. On top, he tends to look for ground and pound and control focus. There's nothing significant there, but he is definitely leveling up fight to fight, so it could be much better than it was during The Ultimate Fighter. He can be touched up on the outside if you time things well, because sometimes he doesn't like set up his kicks and such, so he can definitely be countered off of them. Borjas is mainly a counter striker who pokes from the outside. He'll just continuously use a long jab to try to force his opponents to engage. When the opponent comes in, he tries to counter with the right hand and then continue a combination with hooks if necessary. He also tries to time knees if you come in a little bit too low. Because his countering relies on waiting for opponents to enter, he can be hit as he starts to counter, because he's basically going to wait for you to move and then try to throw as you move. He's not really anticipating anything. Rodriguez, in my opinion, is just a better version of Costa, and we saw what happens when Borjas fought Costa. So I do think Rodriguez should be able to pick at him on the outside a bit and then just blitz in, land first, and eventually TKO him. So I'm going to pick Rodriguez by TKO here. Imanol got robbed against Joseph Morales and tough. Yeah, I agree. The Ultimate Fighter scoring, I don't know what that was. I didn't think it was even a question of who won that fight, and somehow he lost it. It was very weird. Anyways, moving on to Edgar Chairez versus Felipe Bunes or Bunes, I'm not sure. Chairez is basically a pure boxer who learned submissions and then just started using them whenever he is in a position to. He has a lot of emphasis on the jab at range. He will switch that up to a lead hook to try to catch you unaware at some point. When he enters, it is with the 1-2. He's often just willing to take a shot to try to give one because generally speaking, he is the heavier hitter. Because of his boxing stance, he's extremely open to calf kicks and does not check them well at all. So it is definitely a good game plan for any opponent he faces. He's good at not getting submitted, but he's gotten taken down by pretty much anyone who's tried, which is very concerning. Bunes is a submission artist that does have reasonable Muay Thai. He'll try to use his length to throw a lot of kicks and long jabs on the outside. He'll use knees to try to discourage people from entering the pocket recklessly. Ultimately, though, he does want to get the fight to the ground, and he'll dive on single legs and try to transition from there to do so. On the ground, he seems to love chasing arm bars a lot. It is his go-to submission. He has gotten a few of them. His defense everywhere is just not great. He's one of those guys that relies on using his offense to stifle his opponent rather than having any real defensive awareness. This fight, in my opinion, is a little bit closer than the odds because we've seen that Chairez doesn't have wrestling defense. So against someone whose game plan is going to be, I want to get you to the ground, that's a little bit concerning. I am going to say because most of those takedowns were against better opponents that he has a higher chance of defending it here, and I am going to pick Chairez by TKO. But Daniel Lacerda did take down Chairez multiple times, which is not the best look to say the least. But yeah, Chairez by TKO, but I'm not as high on it as I think a lot of people are. All right, Daniel Zellhuber versus Bobby Green. So Zellhuber is basically a long-range volume striker, I should say. He'll continuously just pump out kicks and jabs from range. He's perfectly content doing that in the entire fight and just not progressing at all. If he gets into his flow, though, he will start throwing combinations with his hands more, but always ends up in the pocket when he does so, which is weird given his length. He does have reasonable pocket boxing in all fairness, but it increases the risk and it really doesn't suit his proportions. So it's weird that is how his style developed. My biggest gripe with him is that he just never really sits down at his cross at range unless you are hurt or there's a perfect opportunity. Also, if he does get behind, he just doesn't push to come back into the fight. He's kind of just done. And not that he's going to get finished, but he'll just lose a decision. He isn't spectacular at defending if fighters get past his range also, which makes sense because longer fighters have that issue, but it is definitely a problem for him. Bobby is also a volume striker, but he's more so relying on his cardio and pushing a heavy pace rather than Zellhuber, who is more reliant on his range. Bobby will fight with his hands down and kind of just purely rely on head movement. He tries to counter his opponent when they come in and will lunge with the jabs on the outside. He does actually have underrated footwork in my opinion. He's deceptively good at closing distance because of how he shuffles forwards rather than just stepping forwards. However, his head movement gets very predictable if you know how to bait it out. So the way that Jalen Turner caught him is that he was having trouble landing. So he just doubled up on the jab, saw where Bobby Green slipped, and then just put the right hand behind it where he moved instead of where he was before that, and then just knocked him out pretty much immediately. Bobby also gets rocked by pretty much a gust of wind at this point. His last opponent should not have been someone who is rocking you somewhat badly. So, especially with that, it definitely feels like Bobby is washed. So, I am going to say Zellhuber wins by TKO, but obviously he's not the most reliable performer, so it's very hard to be confident on that, even though he definitely should win this fight. Moving on to Marlon Vera against David Martinez. So, starting with Cheeto. Cheeto is the lowest urgency finisher in literal UFC history. 95% of Cheeto's game plan is to wait. On the outside, he will occasionally throw calf kicks or teep kicks. When he does actually enter, it's often with a lead hook or a 1-2. Occasionally, he'll throw in the double jab cross, but it's not very common. At times, he will use the knees to try to prevent people from entering the pocket, but is not reliable in doing so. Defensively, he will roll with shots and kind of use micro movements to avoid taking anything clean, but he definitely isn't the most elusive in general. Martinez is a karate stylist who puts knockout power into literally everything he throws. The bulk of his strikes are kicks from range, but he'll constantly change targets and stances that it's always coming at you from a different angle. He uses footwork defensively and constantly circles out, and even against Fon's pressure, it was pretty effective, which is impressive, especially because he took it on short notice. When he punches, he mainly enters with jab into overhand, although he will do it from different stances, so you don't know which angle it will come from. If you throw first, he will sometimes counter with heavy hook combos, but he tends to do that a little bit later in the fight. It seems like early he wants to focus on his kicks more. His wrestling defense has held up so far, but it hasn't been heavily tested, so it's hard to say too much about it. So, you have to say what we say about pretty much every Cheeto fight, right? Like, does he have the ability to win this fight? Probably. Will he do it? Very unlikely. I'm going to pick Martinez to win by decision here, because Cheeto is not going to push the pace and try to find the opportunity to catch Martinez. Now, could Martinez get caught because of the fact that he loads up on everything and that gives an opportunity for Cheeto to land something? 100%. That's like my biggest fear for Martinez here, even though I am very high on him. That being said, Martinez is going to be the more active fighter. Unless he gets caught badly, he's going to be winning the rounds. So it's hard to see him losing 2 out of 3 rounds here. So yeah, I do think Martinez wins the decision here and gets pushed into the title picture a lot faster than anyone expected. I feel like Martinez should win, but I feel like Vera has fought better competition. He might evolve his slow start. And people have been saying that Cheeto's going to evolve his slow start for like 5 years. It just never happened. Martinez or Umar? I want to see how Martinez looks this fight. We'll see. But I am definitely high on Martinez, but when you have so little data, it's like 2 fights in the UFC, one being against one of the worst fighters in the UFC. Yeah, I mean, it is hard to make definitive conclusions off of that, especially because one of them was on short notice, so we didn't even see what he's fully capable of there. All right. Moving on to the main event, Brandon Moreno versus Lonnie Kavanagh. So, Moreno is primarily a boxer, although of course he is very well-rounded. He has changed a lot. Younger in his career, he was throwing a lot of combinations, he was pushing a pace, and he was throwing a variety of strikes. Now he's been a lot more focused on looping strikes and not really pushing the same pace that he used to. He's going to blast leg kicks on the outside and then try to time overhands and hooks either as his opponent enters or moving forwards. He will time takedowns to change things up, but his wrestling is kind of like an addition, even though he's very good at it. He doesn't really use it as the primary game plan. We definitely saw in the Royval fight that you can kind of just pick at him from the outside now, and sometimes he just won't throw enough volume to make things work. He is definitely open to counters because he commits so much to everything. As you guys probably saw in my Instagram reel on him, when he throws the lead hook, he is very open to being countered, which I actually kind of don't love for him here. So, Kavanagh is a fast and heavy-handed explosive striker. He throws a lot of calf kicks at distance as well. If you change stances, he will go to the body kick instead. He won't really change stances with you as much. He focuses a lot on countering with the check left hook as his opponent comes in. When he does enter, it is usually with a fast 1-2, but sometimes he will enter with the left hook as well. He is very explosive at pretty much everything, which is why he's able to mix things up with like reasonable takedowns and such. But as we saw in his last fight, the grappling is not as innate to him, so he definitely fatigues a lot faster when he is wrestling a lot. He does have pretty solid takedown defense fundamentals, and his grappling is there, so it's not like he's going to get outclassed in the department. So, when I initially saw this fight, I was like, oh, okay, Moreno is just going to destroy him. Like, Moreno's going to walk through him. This is a completely different level. Kavanagh got, like, gassed out against Charles Johnson, who kind of sucks. And, yeah, I mean, that was my initial thought. The more I started looking at this, the more I don't like in this matchup for Moreno. Moreno has been seeming not as durable. Moreno has not been throwing the same volume that he used to. Moreno has been very open to the lead hook, and so on. So, I don't think that Kavanagh is a great matchup for him, and over 3 rounds, I might go as far as to pick Kavanagh. That being said, this is 5 rounds, and it's at elevation. And in this case, if Kavanagh doesn't finish him in rounds 1 or 2, I do think, in all likelihood, Kavanagh is definitely in trouble in rounds 3, 4, and 5, even if Moreno is not pushing the pace that he could. So I think Moreno is going to get a late finish here, and I'm going to say it's a TKO stemming off a body kick, kind of like how he finished Kai Kara France, except that the finish may be like less hitting clean liver and more so that Kavanagh's gassed and like a body kick kind of just folds him at a certain point. So I am leaning towards that, but I am not nearly as confident as I would like to be, given that Moreno is like my favorite flyweight of all time. Hello, mixed martial artist. Is there any truth to the rumors of Protez versus McGregor? Apparently, it is being considered, but I don't know if that means anything. Like, a lot of things are considered at some. Thoughts on the leg kick being very open for Kavanagh because of how heavy Moreno is on the front foot. He got spun around by Albazi. Yeah, it will be there to some extent. What makes Moreno your favorite flyweight of all time? I think that Moreno is one of those guys who, like, I'm not going to say he isn't talented, but I don't think he's as talented as certain other people in the division. And despite that, he kind of made things work with just having more pressure, just being smarter, just being more persistent and so on. Like, Moreno was not supposed to, he's kind of like Charles Oliveira in a way, right? Both of them hit a point at which they were not supposed to go anywhere in their career. Like, they were supposed to have a mediocre career, get cut at a certain point, and just be forgotten. And both of them turned stuff around and made way more of their career than they were supposed to, which is why I liked both of them a lot. So yeah, that's kind of why Moreno is my favorite flyweight. Three most confident picks. You'll see in the Discord if you join the betting service. I'll plug the betting service one more time. If you guys did not see our results from last week, on the betting Instagram, I posted some of the slips. It was absolutely ridiculous. A lot of people made like 75 plus units last week based off of both the algorithms and my reads. If you're not in the betting service, the algorithm alone did over 250 units in profit last year, I believe. And we have a bunch of other tools in there, including my own reads. So the link for that is in the description. It's only $25 a month. Always feel free to DM me on Instagram if you have questions as well. I could weirdly see Kavanagh winning this one. Inside leg kicks will be there for him if he starts to start early and slow Moreno down. He can manage the fight much better. I honestly don't think the calf kicks are going to help as much because he doesn't have time to wait for that to build up. If Kavanagh wants to win here, he has to do damage early. Could he win a decision via like dropping Moreno in rounds 1 or 2, winning a close round 3, and then dropping 4 or 5? Yeah, that's possible. I wouldn't be wildly shocked. But I do think his path to victory here, or his best path to victory, is fighting a knockout in rounds 1 or 2. And because of that, I think he really needs to, if he wants to win, he needs to look for the lead hook and counter Moreno's jab or hook with it and try to put him out from there. What do you think Kelly Fernandez's ceiling is? Can he beat a Fiziev? Yeah, I do think he'd beat Fiziev. I think his ceiling is probably like top 7, 6. I don't think he'll be a champion, but I'd love for him to prove me wrong. Who beats Tyra 125 to 135? I think his worst matchup would be Petr Yan. Does JPL still beat Islam? Maybe a fully developed JPL, yeah. I mean, I could definitely see it. What did Tyra's loss to Ravel mean to his evolution as a fighter? Why wouldn't Van just defend his takedowns and beat him by decision like Ravel did? Well, I mean, just defend his takedowns is like, yes, I mean, if you can just defend any grappler's takedowns, you'll win. It's much easier said than done, right? I also think that, in all honesty, Van is an easier matchup than Ravel for him because of the fact that Ravel has much better grappling defense. Is it auto pay or month per month? It's monthly subscription. You can cancel at any time, but it'll renew it if you don't cancel. What did you think of the Cheeto versus Zahabi decision? Because I thought Cheeto looked, I don't know what, I think you skipped a word, but Cheeto looked something than I expected going in. Oh, I mean, I thought Zahabi pretty clearly won, but it was a closer fight than it could have been, I guess. Cheeto was definitely very capable of winning. I've never, like, Cheeto was worse than, like, Nate Diaz against Leon Edwards, right? Like, Cheeto rocks Zahabi, and then just slowly walks after him for the next 2 minutes. I'm like, I had Zahabi, so I'm very happy there, but, like, are you stupid? Moreno over under 90 significant strikes? Over. You ever bet crazy parlays guessing the whole card? I mean, I wouldn't parlay the whole card, but do we bet crazy parlays? Sometimes, yeah. Concerns on Montenegro's chin with her being KO'd in 10 seconds on the regional scene. To be fair, she was younger then, but like her style is aggressive enough that I wouldn't be shocked if she got chinned, right? She has the style to lose by knockout, but she also has the style to win by knockout. Thoughts on Entromjin? What is that one? I'm not sure. Why would Van struggle so much more with Tyra than he did with Ray Tsuruya? Because Tyra has much better grappling than Ray. Ray has good wrestling, but if Tyra was in the positions that Ray was in that fight, Tyra would have finished him. When will we see Chimaev next, and will his next fight be against Strickland? I still think his next fight is more likely to be against Imavov. Hopefully it's this year. I mean, that's all I'm going to go for at this point. Pantoja versus Van 2, Van versus Bob, Van versus Horiguchi. I would probably lean Van in all three of them. I know people are going to be like, oh, nothing has changed since Pantoja fought Van the last time. And something has changed, right? When you get an injury like that as an older fighter, even if the injury heals fine, there's a certain hesitation that comes that really costs these older fighters. So I don't expect Pantoja to be the same person when he comes back, in all honesty. Front kicks and knees for Kavanagh as Moreno is more lean towards punish with the left hook and he's more upright. What do you think? I mean, Kavanagh doesn't really use front kicks and knees much. If he can incorporate them well, fair enough. But if it's just not part of his skill set, then it is what it is. Just signed up, was looking at joining since last year. Glad to have you. What's a fighter record that doesn't match their talent? For me, it's hard to believe Jalen Turner would be a 14-8. Yeah, Turner's a good example. There's a few of those as well. Stream went by so fast, was not locked in. Fair enough. You could always look back if you need again. I'll also review all the picks quickly. Yuri or Hamzat, who wins? I'd lean Yuri. Do you think Moreno could fight at 135? Honestly, at this point, I don't think he has the style to. When he was younger, I think it's possible. But running through the picks one more time here. So I'm taking Damian by TKO. Marshall by sub, probably club and sub. Sofia Montenegro by TKO. Silva de Andrade by decision. Quinonez by TKO. Perez decision. Gandra TKO. Luna TKO. Imanol TKO. Chairez TKO. Zellhuber TKO. Martinez decision. And Moreno TKO. How does Strickland versus Chimaev go? I think Strickland's good, but Chimaev more than likely beats him. I would probably have Chimaev decision. If Van were to beat Tyra, how would you see him winning? If Van is going to beat Tyra, he has to do early damage, in my opinion. I don't think they'll match up Strickland against Chimaev because Paramount and the UFC are afraid of the backlash that may result from the trash talk. I don't think UFC is scared. I think Paramount is, though, yeah. Thoughts on Brown versus Hollins? I have to do tape for it. I honestly don't know yet. It's a weird matchup. All Hollins matchups are weird. I said that to my friends too. Reyes is a lot smaller than Tyra and has a completely different style. Reyes take you down and hold you grappler, which is perfect style to lose to Van. Yeah, exactly. Do you think Tyra TKOs Van or subs him? I'm leaning sub. Main card, low-key, all super entertaining fights on paper, even if the name value isn't crazy. Yeah, I agree there. How would Fluffy do at 170? I think he'd have a problem with just not being technical enough, to be honest. Also on Strickland versus Imavov 2. I'd still probably take Strickland. If Klein, Tyra, Jean, JPL, and David Martinez were locked in a room, who comes out? I mean, those questions revolve more around who is smarter and like good at avoiding fights until the end, so that's hard to say. What do you think of 327? Hopefully the fight's announced or not the main card. I'm not sure, honestly. I mean, yeah, it doesn't look amazing yet, if that is the main card to say the least, but we'll see. Hopefully we can get a Chimaev headliner instead. We'll see. Hopefully he comes back soon. Is Tyra the best grappler in the sport? He's up there. I'm not sure if I would comfortably call him the best, but he's close. Would you have picked RDR TKO Fluffy or is his boxing actually that bad? No, I would have picked Fluffy against RDR. Because everyone's being like, oh, RDR would have just blasted the knees. When you only have one thing to worry about in a fight, it's a lot easier to avoid it. So because of that, I think Fluffy would have been able to just overwhelm RDR with the cardio and finish him. Against Strickland, who again, the issue is more in his jab and like his hands, yeah, then you could sneak in the knee and finish someone from there. Where would you rank Umar in bantamweight off his skill? Would he even be in the top 10? Let me see. Rankings. I mean, he'd be in the top 10 for sure, yeah. Not that he wouldn't be top 10. I mean, obviously he beat Figgy, who's still technically top 10. He beat Mario, who's still top 10. So, yeah, I mean, Umar would definitely be top 10. Would he be top 3? I'm less certain of, but he could still be. Which Contender Series prospects do you like? I mean, the only one I could think of was is Lobosiani. 55, who wins, Ilya or Makhachev? At any weight, Ilya wins. Is Strickland's BJJ good enough to withstand Chimaev to get subbed? I don't think he's going to get subbed. It's just a question of can he get up easily enough. Max or Charles? I'm very mildly leaning Max. Do you put any credence into Azakura? And not really, to be honest. Ilya or Hamzat? Probably Hamzat, but I'd have to look at Ilya's wrestling defense and how that functions. As a follow-up, who'd give Hamzat the hardest time? Not saying beat, but at least competitive. Probably Strickland right now. Oh, if you're saying at like in any weight class, probably Yuri. Which top-ranked fighter would be a complete scrub if they didn't have an iron chin? Cheeto. Why are people saying that Chairez pulled out of the van fight? I haven't been able to find a reliable source that confirms this. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen that either. At 170, I think Ilya would struggle so hard against Makhachev. I respect your opinion, though. I just don't see, like, people say that, and I get the thought, right? Like, okay, more weight, sure. But how is Islam going to do anything to Ilya? Like, what skill set does he have that can be used? Ideal main card would be Yuri versus Olberg, Van versus Tyra, Ozma versus Austin, Blades versus Walker. Fair enough, yeah. GSP or Chimaev at 185. I feel like GSP would destroy him. What are you thinking? Yeah, GSP would win. Could Alan with Fight IQ really beat Hamzat? There's a chance. I would say that's closer to a 50-50. Thoughts on Gilbert Burns versus Malott? I mean, it really depends on how washed Burns is or not. I will probably be picking Malott realistically. Islam's wrestling and kicking would be too much for him. I mean, his kicking is okay, but it's nothing that like Ilya hasn't faced before. And his wrestling, I don't see working. At what point in your head does size overpower skill in these intro weight matchups? Most people hearing your takes, one different weight class matchups would go crazy. I think that it first of all depends stylistically, right? So a 125er striker against a 265 striker could still favor the 125 striker as long as they have knockout power because they're going to be a lot faster. A 125 striker against a 145 wrestler could be a little bit harder if they don't have like an extremely elusive style because obviously weight benefits you in wrestling if you can get on the shot in the first place. So it's all stylistic. Prime Izzy versus Prime Silva? Silva. Also in Chu Yu versus Volk? I mean, Volk, sure. As fans, we need Islam versus Ilya. Agreed. Does Malott beat anyone in the top 10 welterweight? I don't think so. Ilya versus Strickland? That's actually an interesting one. I'd have to think about that more. I would also pick Ilya, but why do you think that Islam's wrestling would not work versus... So Islam's wrestling thrives when you are against the fence. Not that he can't get a takedown in the open, but he prefers you being against the fence to get takedown. Ilya's not going to back up to the fence. Like that I could guarantee you. In terms of wrestling in the open, mainly he's going to have to jump on the single leg to get that. And with Ilya being a little bit shorter, and the fact that he's probably going to time the uppercuts coming in if Islam is dipping and such, I expect that to be a large part of his game plan. I just find I'm having a hard time seeing Islam being able to get to the leg and secure it given Ilya's stature and his skill set. Thoughts on Milk? What are the thoughts to have on that? I don't know. Do you keep up with Raf, the wrestling league? Not really, no. Who would you pick, Cup versus Dalia? Cup. All the 265 striker has to do is close the distance with a light guard and it's over. Car crashes heavily favor bigger fighters. You're assuming they can land, right? Flyweights are used to a much faster speed, which is why it's very hard. Like, heavyweights already suck at landing on each other somehow, and that's despite the fact that they're all very slow. Then when you add in faster strikers, it's going to be borderline impossible for them to land. Where do you think power mainly comes from, genetics or biometrics? Like, why does Torres have so much power? Some is genetics, and biometrics, to be fair, are part of genetics, but so some of it is genetic, and then part of it is how you develop the muscles, of course. So like, just sometimes how the muscles are built in terms of what leverage they're able to produce from what definitely depends how much power you can generate. Do you think that Ilya would have any chance on the feet with Pereira? If he just stood up, probably not. That would be a very tough matchup. If he mixed in the wrestling, maybe some chance. Couldn't Islam get takedowns through clinch and body lock? But how is he going to get those? And he doesn't really normally do that either, so it'd be a very different skill set than what he normally has. If Islam gets him down, it's over? I don't think so, because again, Ilya has better grappling than pretty much anyone Islam has faced except Oliveira. And we saw against Oliveira, Islam didn't really want any transitions in the grappling. He just wanted to control time. At this point, if they cut the entire heavyweight division, I could not care. Yeah, I agree. Ilya gets up, Islam won't hold him down. Yeah, I agree. Pantoja versus Terrence McKinney, who wins? Yeah, Pantoja would win that. Who's the best McGregor clone out of Jusengyu, Topuria, Gary, and Rufi? Probably Topuria. Ilya has Volk IQ with Pereira power. I would actually say Ilya has higher fight IQ than Volk. If Islam takes Ilya down and flattens him out, I don't see Ilya getting back up. He can defend some takedowns in the open, but once he's on his back, it's very hard for him. But based on what? Like Islam stopping Moicano? Like, JDM's also not a spectacular grappler, right? We're talking about a very different level of grappling here. Has to be majority genetics, right? Lopez has some of the worst punching mechanics I've ever seen, but still knocked guys out. I mean, Lopez is an extreme, right? You can have bad genetics and still have reasonable punching power if you put the work in. But yes, Lopez just is very blessed in terms of the genetics. Okay, guys, I'll save heavyweight. We're waiting for you then. What weight class do you think has the perfect balance of skill and power? Probably like 145 or maybe 155. Blades KO is hockey, right? I'd lean towards that pre-tape. Khabib or Ilya? I think Khabib by sub. I think that Khabib is a worse matchup for Ilya than Islam is, for sure. But that being said, I still think Ilya has a reasonable chance there. Whereas Ilya has shown elite grappling. I mean, he was much more comfortable in the grappling against Oliveira than Islam is. We could say that at least. Milky or Diego, is it crazy to say that Milky might actually beat him considering how garbage Diego's footwork is? Oh, not crazy at all. I think Milky would knock him out. It's an insane notion. It's insane to me, the notion that Islam out-grappled Charles because he subbed him. All grappling exchanges on the open were won by Charles. Islam only won one that was close to the fence. Yeah, I mean, Islam basically knocked him out and then had the formality of subbing him from there, right? So Islam didn't look spectacular grappling-wise against Charles by any. Which lightweights would you take to beat a prime Tony at 155? Ilya... Charles is a question. I don't know who would win that. I'd probably lean towards Tony, just barely. Who else? I could see Holloway being a tough matchup for him, but it's like I might still pick Tony. It's just more of a close matchup. Islam and Ilya both lost the pure grappling sequences to Charles and won the striking. I agree, though. I think Ilya did a little bit better on the ground. Prime Tony versus Khabib. I still think that's actually a very good matchup for Tony, especially in his prime, because people base stuff off of like his end of career takedown defense, which was a lot worse than his prime takedown defense, right? Like in his prime, his takedown defense looks spectacular. End of career was a little bit questionable, to say the least. So I think Tony would have been able to make Khabib work too much. And when Khabib really had to work a lot, he gassed out pretty badly. I think Tony was the perfect person to finish Khabib late. Would Saryukin be a harder, easier fight for Ilya compared to Islam? I think slightly easier, because I think that Arman doesn't have the striking defense that Islam has. So like with Ilya versus Islam, Ilya has to create a specific sequence against defense to knock him out. And granted, I think he'll find it eventually, but it could take a moment, right? With Ilya versus Arman just has terrible striking defense in general. So I just see him going to sleep pretty quickly, like maybe within a minute or two. All right, I am probably going to end here so I can hopefully recover soon enough. But I appreciate you guys coming. If you guys are betting, do consider checking out my betting service. Link is in the description here. Always feel free to DM me on Instagram. Have a good night, everyone. If you're watching the event, hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you guys next time.